The US government has been shut down, but in the past 4 days, they've added $100 billion in debt. Now, it makes you think, what is the purpose of the government actually being shut down at this point? And why is the debt still exploding when we have the government that is essentially not doing anything for us? And on top of it all, have you even noticed that the government is shut down at this point? Are you noticing a tangible difference with what is going on? I think a lot of Americans are starting to wake up to the fact that, hey, hang on a minute. I haven't really noticed any substantial change, and it seems like everything has been running very smoothly since the government is shut down. So it's making you wonder, what the hell is going on, and why are we seeing the massive amount of debt exploding? Because on the one hand, we have one party that has been telling us that, hey, we need less government intervention. And that is essentially what the Republican Party stands on, less government. But on the other side of things, we've seen that the federal debt just keeps going up and it's exploding. It's even past that $38 trillion mark last month, which is the last $1 trillion in a relatively fast period. It's the fastest $1 trillion has been added to the national debt since the COVID pandemic or the cerveza sickness, where literally the whole entire world shut down and we just printed 60% of the money supply at the time. So, well, you got to ask yourself, with all of this, why are we seeing such massive amounts of debt with the government shut down? And what is the solution for this? Is this going to cause the debt spiral, the coveted debt spiral that everybody is talking about? Well, if we keep digging in, I mean, the White House is very blatantly blaming the Democrats for having this shut down with 33 days, 17 hours, and 37 minutes of this entire government shutdown. But it's really just a question. How much could the federal government shutdown actually cost the economy? Now, for those of you wondering, I mean, if you look at the debt to GDP ratio, if you look at a lot of these other things, a lot of the GDP comes strictly from government spending. So without governments actually coming on, GDP is going to drop and that debt to GDP ratio is going to skyrocket in flight. But that's beside the point here because we are seeing a very interesting time, to say the very least, where we're having an impasse. We're having the Republicans on one side saying, oh, spend less, spend less, spend less. They've implemented Doge, they've done all these different things. But then you look at it and you actually see that 100 or $1 trillion has been added to that US debt faster than in any other time period. Now, on the flip side of things, you have the Democratic Party who wants to increase that government spending. So it is sort of an impasse where it seems like the government has a spending problem because this federal shutdown is over a month long, but it has an obvious economic impact. It's just the workers who aren't receiving their paychecks and food aid recipients who haven't gotten their benefits. But in past shutdowns, the estimates of lost economic activities have reached billions of dollars. In context of a $30 trillion economy, that's not a lot. Exactly, right? Because as this national debt has, accelerating, there is a watchdog that says there's no way for a great nation like America to run on its finances. But if you look at the national debt of the United States, well, it just keeps on going up, folks. This just keeps on ticking. I mean, the federal debt was going down actually a little bit after the COVID-19 pandemic. But then since that time, the last 2 years, it's been really going up as a percentage of that federal revenue. Now, it's been relatively flat, but what's interesting is that we're going to continue to see this skyrocket in flight here because the debt held by the public is showing that there is a lot of faith that is being lost in the United States dollar. Now, what happens when people lose faith in a fiat currency? Well, this is strictly just, what we plan on, seeing here is that the dollar is not being used for government trade anymore or international trade anymore. We're seeing a lot of issues with, regulatory. We're seeing people start to move away. We're seeing people start to talk about using the yuan, a BRICS currency, all of these different things to get away from the United States. Now, got to ask yourself with this, right? Is this a net positive when we're seeing a benefit or we're seeing, maybe some competition here? Well, the United States really wants to ramp all this up and get people on board to the dollar because this is our biggest export is the United States dollar, which is a issue within itself, but the debt to the penny data set provides information about the total outstanding public debt. And man, oh man, is that thing humming along because the national debt increases literally $69,000 per second. Now, what is the average wage in the United States? Because if you had to guess, would you guess that the US debt is accelerating faster than the average yearly wage in the United States? Well, newsflash, folks, it is. The average salary in the United States is 63,000, just under 64,000. And the national debt increases $69,000 per second. So that means the average person could work an entire year and not even make up for a second of what the United States debt is going. And this $2.2 trillion of debt is just added year over year, and that continues to accelerate here. So as we are going through this, make sure you're hitting that like button and hitting that subscribe button for me so you could join in the chat. But as of October 3rd of this year, the total gross national debt was just under that $38 trillion. Of course, I alluded to the fact we've crossed that Rubicon here, which is not a positive to cross that $38 trillion here just yet. But this 2.17 trillion is higher than 1 year ago and 10.8 trillion higher than 5 years ago, which means on average, we've averaged bringing in $2 trillion more of debt every single year for the past 5 years. And over the past year, the rate of increase average of 5.96 billion, literally $6 billion per day, $248 million per hour, and 4.4 million per minute, and nearly $69,000 per second. I mean, these numbers are astronomical and absolutely insane, especially when you put it like that, right? Because the amount of the United States debt is higher, getting increased higher per second than the average salary in the United States. I mean, that's absolutely insane. You got like it's the math, folks. So as we're seeing this really skyrocket here, the public debt is stabilized, but it remains significantly elevated, right? Because we're paying more interest on that. That's why Donald Trump was clamoring for lower interest rates, really, just because he wanted to pay less in these interest payments. But the reality is the US has a spending problem. It's not all peaches and daisies here because, Donnie T's in office, unfortunately. As much as I love the guy and I see the positives he's doing for the economy, there's a government spending problem. This is why they tried to implement the Doge. And I do disagree with a few of his policies, right? When you start to see some of this really come down to the wire, well, I mean, we've got the Federal Reserve essentially claiming that they are not, let's say, impartial, but then they cut interest rates right before the last election. They're holding off cutting interest rates now. There's a lot of just meandering right here. Jerry, I don't even know, just like essentially trying to go back and forth with all of this. So it's very interesting when you break this down, especially when you look at how the dollar has been reacting as well, because the dollar now has been absolutely pumping here lately since the last time I came and spoke with you guys. We're nearly at that 100%, which is huge because the dollar's had its worst start to the year or worst year so far. in the past 50 years. Year to date, it's still down nearly 8%, but we're starting to see a little Q4 pump, which is interesting because with the way the stock market is going, it's absolutely taking off here. And of course, we just had market open. So we started off on a hot note and we fell down just a little bit, a little red candle to start the day. But we're at 0.17 up on the day. And, if you look at year to date, the S&P 500 is up 16%. But the crazy thing is it's been on a generational run essentially since these April lows. We haven't seen a period like this in a very long time where essentially, you know, for what, April to November or through December, like 6 months time, it's essentially been just up and to the right. Now, this all can change, and I definitely think that with the government shutdown, it's highlighting the fact that the United States has a full-fledged issue underneath the surface that doesn't involve, just the Federal Reserve, right? I mean, it's a lot of these different aspects, but if you look at the Fed's standing repo facility, it's the most since its debut, right? Doing at 20.4 billion, which doesn't sound like a lot when the debt is at 38 trillion dollars, but all of these numbers you're seeing are just new all-time high, something that we haven't seen before, right? So as we keep getting further along and we keep seeing more of these all-time highs, you got to ask yourself, okay, what the hell is going on? And is this sustainable? My initial aspect or initial thought to all of this is no. I don't think that, the government spending, what we see with the United States just continuing to spend money and eliminate those taxes, because tax revenue is essentially just a mute point. It doesn't matter at this point, because no matter what the tax revenue is, you're going to get just basically a huge kick in the butt. Like at this point, regardless of the tax revenue, you're going to start to see some, let's call it some negatives here, right? So I see we got McLovin in the chat. What's going on, boss? Make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button with the bell notification so you can join McLovin in the chat. And thank you guys all. You guys got me over those 400 subscribers. Help me get to 500 before the end of the year. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and I'll catch you guys all at the next one.